Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. After last week where we covered Serie A, we've decided to cover the Bundesliga because Spurs D22 has said, what do you guys think about the manager situation in the Bundesliga? But before we get stuck into that with Chris Hamill and Patrick Van Straten, remember to subscribe to Eurofootball Daily and hit that notification bell to never miss a video. But the Bundesliga is actually a pretty interesting topic right now because no fewer than 6 teams have appointed new managers, which is 1/3 of the league. So I'll briefly go through who's come in. So Schroeder, who is the former Hoffenheim assistant, has taken over the full-time job there. Glasner's replaced Labadia at Wolfsburg. David Wagner is coming at Schalke. Marco Rose at Borussia Mönchengladbach. Nagelsmann is obviously at Leipzig now. And Hertha Berlin have a new manager in Ante Kovic. What's more, Bayern Munich have gone big in the window so far. They brought in Pavard, Luka Hernandez and Jan-Fett Arp for over 180 million euros. And Dortmund have gone even bigger. Brandt, Hazard, Alcacer, Schultz, Hummels, 130 million euros, which I think means that the Bundesliga could be fascinating in 1920. A lot of managerial change, lots going on at the top. Pato, Bayern Munich have gone big to try and arrest some sort of defensive weaknesses, it seems. Do you think that they need that attacking player to come in to really make the difference next year?
Yeah, I think they probably do. Like, they still got some decent minutes out of Robben and Ribery this season. Lewandowski had an up year in terms of his output. Like he created loads of chances and got loads of good shots, but actually his finishing was below par this year. Got 22 goals off 33 expected goals, which is very unusual for him. But they got their lowest points tally, I think, since 2011-12, which I think was the last time they didn't win the title. 78 points, which admittedly in a 34-game league is not as bad as it sounds. And they had a shocking start to the season, which is kind of the reason behind that. I think they won 6 of their opening 12 league games, and it was only at the end that it started to pick up into regular Bayern form. I think it was important that he turned over the defence. Like they were shopping Boateng around last summer and the summer before. Hummels, obviously, they were trying to get rid of as well, and he's actually gone this summer for way, way above what he's worth. That's really good money for them. It's not great money for Dortmund, but he's a decent player. Like, he's still very good. However, I think that bringing in Hernandez and Pavard will be really useful for them, not least because it gives them massive flexibility in that back line. Like now with Süle, with Pavard, with Hernandez, with Boateng, even with Martinez, they've got really solid centre backs. Pavard and Hernandez can obviously play as full backs as well, but they've still got Alaba and Kimmich there, so they can really pretty much play. They have a team that can play as a specialist 4 at the back or a specialist 5 at the back, which is quite unusual. In attack, I do still worry a bit. Gnabry had a good season, but to me, I look at that and I see Lewandowski behind those numbers. Like Gnabry's goals, a lot of them came from Lewandowski creating huge numbers of chances and some shots from outside the box, which you can't really rely on going in at a high rate. So I think that the moves for Leroy Sané and we've heard Ousmane Dembele in the last week make a lot of sense. They need to get younger in attack. They need a lot more talent in attack. And if Lewandowski were to get injured, you'd have serious worries about how that attack would function. You know, like Gnabry's good, even very good maybe, but he certainly isn't going to carry Bayern Munich's attack. He wouldn't even be the best attacker on Dortmund. He probably wouldn't even be in the top 3. Thomas Müller has really, really declined since the Pep Guardiola days when he got 20 in a season. I
feel like every time we criticise Thomas Müller, all the Bayern Munich fans in the comments go absolutely nuts, saying like he's the link man, he's so crucial to the way we play. But I've never really seen what he's exceptional at. I think he picks up interesting areas and occasionally gets to the end of things, but I think he's just such an average player. I don't know why he's lasted so long.
But being exceptional at something is... Some things that you're exceptional at don't necessarily come out in the stats. And also, I think that there are players who do kind of basically create the right spacing, like make the attack work. I think last season for Arsenal, say Mkhitaryan wasn't exactly good last season. Like a lot of his passes, like particularly with his left foot, were not tremendous, even though actually he's got normally exceptional technique. But I think Arsenal's attack, the spacing of it, the interchange worked a lot better when he was there. And sometimes that is the case. Like a player like Lallana is a similar to play that. And actually you could even say Iniesta at Barcelona. Iniesta's close control was world class, but he didn't create huge numbers of chances. He certainly didn't do much defensive work. What he did was make the attack function and kind of organise the attack. And I think that Müller has a useful role, but you certainly wouldn't want to rely on him as a winger, you wouldn't rely on him as a 10, and you wouldn't rely on him as a centre forward. So if I were Bayern, that is absolutely where I'd be putting all my money. As the summer wears on, I'd be thinking, how much is it going to cost me to get Sané, and if I can't get him, how much is it going to cost me to get Ousmane Dembele? Because those would be the sensible moves for the future of that club. And also, I know that they probably want to wait a year and get Timo Werner on a free, but just get him now. Just get him now. And Nabil Fekir has a year on his deal as well. Like there are ways for them to rebuild an attack now, which I think would be prudent, because if Werner gets to January and Premier League clubs can come in and offer him a huge contract, they will.
Yeah.
Liverpool have already sniffed around him as well, haven't they?
Yeah, I think he'd be a weird signing. For
Hearing this week, though, that they've gone slightly off the idea of signing Nicola Pepe as well, which is interesting. And Sané apparently leaning towards staying at Man City, but we'll see how that develops in the coming months. Chris, we're hearing there that Bayern need to shop in their forward areas. Dortmund, in contrast, have gone big in their forward areas, or particularly in their attacking midfield areas.
Well, before I talk about Dortmund, because I am actually incredibly bored of talking about them, obviously, they've made some fascinating moves at the start of this campaign and well worth revisiting. I'm being harsh, and we'll get to Dortmund in a second. However, my primary research, my rudimentary morning research before a Continental club involves me going to Twitter and putting some keywords from the title in. And I actually stumbled across some pretty interesting stories for Hertha Berlin.
Oh, the new boys.
Who have just... A businessman called Lars Windhorst has just bought, not a majority share, I think it's around 37.5%, for 125 million euros, which I was really surprised to hear was the largest equity transfer in Bundesliga history. So this got me thinking, okay.
Well, I guess that's because they're owned by various factions, then fans have to have a certain percentage of the board, right? So it's harder to just acquire a big share.
That's true, but it was fascinating that he was go for a club who just finished 11th, when there's other clubs that seem far more prudent to invest that amount of money in, because they only just reacquired 36% from an American firm and they sold it for a 70% uptake, which feels like too good a deal to be true. And Lars Windhorst has got a history of shady dealings, according to the Financial Times. So that kind of lured me in. And then before I know it, we've got a shoot, and I've not really read through your section on Dortmund. However, we'll get there. Because the club, did a little bit more digging, because I was wondering if they were going to bring in players, and lo and behold, they're actually selling some of their key assets. Valentino Lazaro being one. He's going to Inter Milan. I'll get onto him in a second. But they're 120 million euros in debt, and have racked up losses for four seasons in a row, which isn't untold of in football, is it? It's not particularly rare, but they are in dire need of investment. Of course, picking up Dedrick Boyata on a free as well. So that was kind of where their aspirations were at prior to this guy coming in. And I just wonder if he's going to come in and make some significant signings, and they might, possibly be in the hat for Champions League football. We've kind of seen the way that Schalke have yo-yoed in years gone by, Leverkusen. So do we have another potential candidate for a Champions League competitor in Hertha Berlin?
Solid mid-table, upper mid-table for quite a while.
They've been relegated twice.
And they're in Berlin.
Yeah. They've been relegated twice in the last 10 years.
When I said the new boys, I thought you were talking about Union Berlin, who have just come up. Hertha Berlin, obviously, been there for years.
Yeah, Hertha Berlin. But like I said, they have gone down twice. Berlin being the only city in the Bundesliga this campaign that has two teams representing them. Of course, Union Berlin, well worth a shout out. Did DM them on Twitter, didn't get back to me. So rude. Would like to make some content with you guys. But then, I went into their squad. This was prior to seeing the transfer rumour of Lazaro to Inter Milan, which looks like him and Lukaku have the same agent, and his agent's been spotted at Inter Milan. So this has kind of led people to question whether it's Lazaro he's there for, or Lukaku, or both, because Conte's leading a bit of a transfer revolution, if you believe the guys on Twitter. But Lazaro, I was going to kind of prize him out of that squad, because quite impressive statistically speaking, and tout him for someone else. But yeah, he looks like he could do a very good job in a back five. Defensive numbers okay, 3 tackles and interceptions. Attacking numbers slightly warped by the fact that he's played on the right wing, but he has predominantly played right back this season, so almost 2 key passes per 90, which is about double that of David Alaba in the Bundesliga. And I think only 3 other players have racked up more assists than him since November of 2017, so he's been pretty consistent in the creating department. Passing, pretty poor, 76% pass accuracy from 40 passes per game, and he only completes 1.6 long balls, which means, well, what I take from that, without having watched a great deal of him, barring the 5-minute YouTube reel that I clocked before I came down here, is that his short passing game probably needs a little bit of work, or he's quite ambitious with his passing through the line. 0.8 shots as well. He got 3 goals, so nine goal contributions from right back was pretty good. But I think they're going to be fine. I think Hertha have placed a lot of faith in a young man called Javaro De La Rose's son, who was, I'm led to believe, from Hertha fans, was absolutely on fire prior to his injury at the start of last campaign, and he's already represented the Netherlands. And that was all I had
There we
time
go.
for.
I enjoyed that.
But we'll move on to Dortmund. And it's pretty unfair to call them boring because they've made some pretty interesting moves, isn't it? Haven't they? Sorry, at the start of this campaign. So Nicolas Schulze from Hoffenheim, or was it Schulz? Schultz for 25 million euros. He was brilliant under Nagelsmann last campaign, wasn't he? So 30 Bundesliga games, 1 goal, 5 assists, 2 tackles and interceptions, 2.2 key passes, more impressively. And there was a few real kind of central figures to Hoffenheim's very, very functional attack, and it was Demirbay and it was Schultz, and bringing him in makes perfect sense. Julian Brandt, who I feel like we've spoken about to death, feels like he's been around forever, still 23 years old, 7 goals and 11 assists, finished the campaign really strongly. Of course, when Peter Bosch came in, his numbers really spiked, didn't they? Averaging over 0.5 expected goals and assists per 90 for the last 2 seasons as well. Torgan Hazard, who's always older than I expect whenever I talk about him. 26 years old, but has really come into his own the last 2 or 3 years, hasn't he? So 10 goals and 10 assists this season, averaged over 0.6 expected goals plus assists per 90, which is about the same as Sadio Mane in the Premier League. I think just short of him. I think he's about 0.68. And over the last 2 seasons, he's also kind of replicated that form in a very similar way to Brandt. So you're hoping, if you're a Dortmund fan, they can hit the ground running and you can make up significant ground on Dortmund. Because let's not get it twisted. According to the numbers, Red Bull Leipzig were the second best team in the Bundesliga last campaign by quite some distance. And Dortmund were extremely fortunate, according to the underlying numbers, to rack up the amount of points that they did. You know, owing to some wonder strikes from Paco and Jadon Sancho's kind of virtuoso involvement. But they've also signed Paco on a permanent. I mean, we've covered that. 18 goals in 1,200 minutes. That says it all, doesn't it? But you kind of picked up on some other stories outside of the world of Dortmund and Bayern, who we covered pretty extensively last season, which is why I was a little bit hesitant just to do them here. Marco Rose, I was convinced for about a 4.5 day period that he was going to go to Celtic this summer, before I was then convinced Jose Mourinho might be heading to Celtic. I mean, ultimately ended up with Neil Lennon, which is class, of course, but Marco Rose at Gladbach, that feels like Gladbach are punched well above their weight bringing him in.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he had such a good record at Salzburg. I think he won 72% of his games there in all competitions. Lost 1 of his 22 league games in the Austrian Premier League last year, and then topped a group with RB Leipzig, Celtic and Rosenborg in the Europa League. Played really well in that competition, 17 goals in 6 games. They then beat Club Brugge and then lost out in a thrilling tie to Napoli.
Yeah. What impressed me about that was they were significantly better than RB Leipzig. And we liked RB Leipzig. But I was having watched the 4 games, I was like, wow.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And he got the best out of some of their key men. I mean, Munas de Boer scored 37 goals in 42 games under him. Which is just ridiculous. So it's going to be fascinating to see what he does at Borussia Mönchengladbach, and they're obviously dealing with the loss of Hazard, who was so crucial to them last year. And then David Wagner has also taken over at Schalke, which I know that Schalke had an awful year last year. Obviously got rid of Tedesco after they got thrashed by City, and then sort of meandered towards the end of the season. I think they only won 2 of their final 14 games and only finished 5 points above relegation. But David Wagner, who jumped ship at Huddersfield in January for supposed personal reasons, and then instantly gets the job at Schalke. I think that's quite a promotion, really.
Yeah, it's class from him. 6-month break, gets an improved job.
100%. And they can't really get any worse than last year as well. Their forwards were atrocious. Bergstaller and Uth both really underperformed. But there's some hope. Ahmed Kutucu, who is Kieran Carlin's favourite player in the world, probably behind Bernardo Silva, showed a lot of promise towards the end of the year, and they've already made a signing from the Bully 2, which I'd actually never heard about. He's called Bernard Tekpete from Paderborn for 2.25 million, and he had a fantastic year in the Bully 2 last year. He's 21, he's from Ghana. He scored 10 and assisted 4 in 32 games down there. 3.9 shots, 3.7 dribbles, and 1.3 key passes per 90. And that side was crying out for some pace and for some inventive wing play, rather. Because they've got some pretty solid players in there, like Nastasic, Ben Taleb, etc. So it'll be interesting to see what David Wagner can do at Schalke. But that leads us quite nicely on to RB Leipzig, Pat, because it seems like with Nagelsmann going there that it could it be a 3-horse race next year or a closer race next year, and RB Leipzig finally get that final push, sort of real title challenge?
It's going to come down to what happens with Werner, I think. I mean, the rest of the team's really good, and because it's a young side, you'd expect them to improve. Konate and Upamecano are only going to get better in the centre-back position. Saraki, who was like a big signing for them out of Argentina at left-back, barely played last year because Halstenberg was having a great game. I think it's... midfield as well. Tyler Adams obviously only got about 700 minutes in the end.
Haidara similarly.
Haidara too. So I think that there's a lot more to come there. You don't want to be in a situation where you're relying on Yusuf Poulsen. I think he's probably unlikely to be as good as he was last season again. And Bruma, Jean-Kevin Augustin, like those guys can definitely contribute, but I would be looking at how I can get in the best possible forward. On the other hand, Nagelsmann has done a great job in the past of getting big production out of forwards. Now, he has Kramaric at Hoffenheim, and Kramaric is amazing. Kramaric has had 3 incredible seasons there. But getting, 15 goals out of Belfodil this season, who was playing it was either in Qatar or Saudi Arabia last year, is pretty remarkable, and in the Belgian league before that. So it's just, I don't know, you imagine that with some better attacking talent, he'd be able to do pretty well up front. And having rangier, quicker young centre-backs means they should be able to mop up a little bit more at the back. So, I don't know, I think Rangnick did a fantastic job last season, but I do think that under Nagelsmann, you could see that squad go to a new level. But to me, it just comes down to who comes in to replace Werner, if Werner goes.
Yeah, you make such a good point about his sort of production he gets out of his forwards, because I think Kramaric was second for expected goals per 90
it was like
in the Bully last year.
0.85
Yeah,
or
ridiculous, behind Lewandowski. Just incredible, really.
I would be nice to see them go in for someone like Sebastian Aller. That would be a pretty punchy, significant move, in my opinion.
Though stylistically, he's a bit similar to Poulsen. Like, I think Poulsen is that big
who's
guy
willing
who
to drift out to to either flank and make room for a team.
and he holds the ball
did that
up.
for your man who went to Real Madrid, didn't he, Jovic? So, unselfish player, but still, like, his output is incredible. I mean, it can't hurt to have that competition up front.
Yeah, definitely. Because Haller's a step above, I think, as well.
Yeah, I do think Haller's got a higher ceiling than Poulsen, but there's no significantly weak parts, to RB Leipzig.
No.
So,
and we haven't even mentioned Bayer Leverkusen, who played exceptionally well under Peter Bosch as well. So it's going to be a fascinating year next year.
And signed Demirbay. So weakening Hoffenheim, and then Nagelsmann leaves Hoffenheim.
Imagine
you expect
Hoffenheim will
they're
drop
going
out
to fall
quite.
away.
Yeah, though Hoffenheim have gone for quite an interesting hire again, like they did with Nagelsmann.
The reserve team manager.
They got in Schroeder. Well, actually,
he was
no,
Ajax.
He used to be reserve team manager, and then he went to Ajax, and he was an assistant to Erik ten Hag last season. So he's been Nagelsmann's assistant, Erik ten Hag's assistant. You've got to imagine that he's quite an interesting football mind. He is Dutch as well.
I think their very numbers oriented, aren't they? They're very kind of smart behind the scenes, Hoffenheim, and enabling to punch above their weight. Dietmar Mopp still running things over there.
Yeah.
He's a software mogul, mate. So
is he?
Computer stuff.
God, it's not
That
my
is the
thing.
technical term for computer stuff.
Me and Detmar Mott would not get along. Guys, quick predictions for the top 3 next year in the Bundesliga. Chris.
Christ. I mean, it's fairly boring. Bayern, Dortmund, RB Leipzig, the three clubs we've spoken about. However, I will caveat that with, if Leipzig make 1 to 2 punchy signings, I could see them finishing above Dortmund, despite Dortmund's fantastic start to the summer. I think the players they've bought in bring them up to a level. They're not going to bridge a massive gap. They're going to bring them up to the level that of points they delivered but didn't necessarily deserve last campaign. So I think we might see them replicate last season's form in many ways. So a little bit negative for Dortmund fans, but that's the kind of top three, and I think it's hard to navigate away from that.
And what about your boys Hertha Berlin?
Oh, Hertha. Oh, well. I should keep a keen eye on this renegade owner. But they did steal Derek Boyata from us. We should have sold him to Fulham for $9.5 million. That still keeps me up at night. $9.5 million.
Yeah, down the drain. Fair. Pat, top three.
Bayern, Dortmund, Leipzig.
Yeah, I think it's impossible. I got my fingers burnt last year when I bet against Bayern. They always come
Still
good
haven't given me that £5.
I have, haven't I?
No.
I think I put it on your desk on the final day, did I not?
Yeah. Shock.
Just pay him back in trade.
Put it on my desk. What an awful excuse.
Well, let's discuss this off camera because I might not well have. I
Give
can't
him a
quite
haircut.
remember this. I could give you a haircut.
Don't come near me with
sort
those
that right out.
clippers. I'll cut you.
Let's move on to quickfire questions. First quickfire question comes in from Amazing Vahira. Sorry if I've completely butchered your name. They have asked, should Arsenal sell Aubameyang to buy Zaha? I know a lot of people want to hear Pat's opinion on this. Pat.
That is disgusting.
Not to buy Zaha, but I'd be fine with selling Aubameyang to buy some people. I mean, I'd rather sell Lacazette, but I think if you're going to sell, if you need to rebuild, and Arsenal do, then selling Aubameyang to finance that is totally fine. However, doing it to get Zaha in, he's a very good dribbler. And when he played up front at the end of not the season just gone, but the one before, his numbers were great. But all the rest of the time, his numbers have been pretty unimpressive. Not a big creator, certainly not a big goal scorer.
Dribble numbers are consistently good, aren't they?
Like his dribbling is good. But that's it. And you can find other dribblers. Like you could get Alain Saint-Maximin or whatever out of Nice. Like these guys do exist. So I think that I would happily sell one of our centre forwards to buy somebody, but doing it to buy Zaha would be an extremely strange move.
70 million too much for you, Hamill? Do you see Zaha moving this
I
summer?
just started thinking about Pione Sisto then and Emre Moore in terms of dribblers and key passes. Why has no one raided Celta Vigo for some talent yet?
Sofiane Boufal had a good year there as
Sofiane
well.
Boufal, who
had a good year
completes
for dribbles.
a million
I thought it was-
dribbles per 90 and then has
I thought
zero
his numbers were
endpoints.
quite good.
He and Sisto are kind of opposites in that regard. Like he dribbles a lot and doesn't deliver a lot, whereas Sisto dribbles a lot less but is much more effective.
Yeah, puts up some very good key passes. Emery Moore's more the dribbler out of them pair, isn't he? 70 million, too much for Zaha? Yes. Let's have the next question.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on to a more sort of philosophical one, which I really liked from Daniel Root. Well done. It says, what classifies a player as world class? Now, it's a bit difficult just to spring these on these two, but I've been giving this a little bit of thought. And what I think, my personal definition of someone who is world class, you have to be in the discussion for the best 3 to 4 players in the world in your position. I think world class gets banded around so much these days. So, world class left backs, you're probably looking at Marcelo, Andy Robertson, Alex Sandro,
Tierney.
and no, not Tierney. I'll come up with a fourth one in due course. But that would be my definition of world class. What for you, Chris, classifies a player as world
I said on
class?
Hot Takes yesterday that if Arsenal sign Tierney, then they'll have the best fullbacks in the league, completely forgetting about Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Maybe the second best.
Definitely the second best. This is a debate that has been had in the office, so I'm kind of tired of it. I don't actually think it's a very fruitful endeavour. I think your definition is very sound. I prefer it than people who tie the definition of world class to people that have won trophies.
Yes, sound
I
on the
mean,
second.
Moreno winning a Champions League this campaign does not make him a significantly better player than Danny Rose, who got to the final but didn't clinch said trophy. So I think yours is one of the most sensible hypotheses I've come across. Do I have anything to add to it? Probably not. Yeah, the best in your position. But then if your position is well stocked,
It's a good point,
then I
actually.
would probably expand it beyond 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And I would probably try and create some tiers using numbers.
Fair.
So does that get you off,
I
Pat?
think it's weird to try and codify like this particular adjective. It's like in American football, like the adjective elite has come to mean something special, and people are like, well, is this guy elite or is that guy elite? And in football, it's world class. So people would debate the definition of world class in a way they don't debate the meaning of other adjectives like amazing or one of the best. Even if you say one of the best in the world, I feel like people will ignore that more than if you say he's world class. I don't know. It just seems strange to me. I don't particularly care. I think so long as somebody's really good, it doesn't matter. And I think Hamill's absolutely right. Sometimes you just happen to be part of a generation where there are loads. And do we differentiate between right wingers and left wingers? I wouldn't. You know, it just seems very strange to me to say, oh, okay, well, we need to know the exact number of players in that position and rate this person relative to them. I just think it's just silly.
I need to add the word codify to my
to your lexicon.
I like it.
You'll be using that next week on Winners and Losers on Monday.
Codify.
Guys, I hope you've enjoyed Continental Club for this week. Let us know what you thought of it in the comments below. And Chris, what should they go and do now?
Okay, so what is going live today? We need to talk on Football Daily. Awkward FIFA went out with John Babb at the weekend on FDFC, soon to be changed to a new name. I saw Kieran doing the rebrand today and it looks nice. James edited Hot Takes yesterday. He's looking at me right now, which is why it reminded me. And Olivia's podcast is out. And that probably covers it.
Anything else, Pat?
No, that's it.
Come back tomorrow as well and watch Pat's one-on-one. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, another one-on-one. One-on-ones are classed.
Yeah, they are really good. Thanks very much, guys. See you later. Bye.